Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Continuing our theme of Paticcasamuppāda, and also trying to keep things practical. I was mentioning in the Q&A session today how, and previously, how over many winter retreats in particular, Lumpur Sumedho made the teachings of dependent origination the main theme, very deliberately and consciously, and also the practice of wise reflection, so that he could see that many of the Sangha members liked to concentrate the mind and then just delight in the pleasantness of a peaceful, quiet, bright mind, and he would actively discourage that, just kind of sitting there enjoying the kind of day at the beach kind of experience that one can have from a quiet mind. It's just things peaceful, still, bright. And it was understandable because life at Amaravati was very active. There's very demanding physical work to look after the place. And the winter retreat in those days was only 2 months long. So it was understandable that we would like just a sort of a quiet break and not to be say engaging in a very dynamic way. But Lumpur, being the compassionate teacher that he is, wouldn't let us do that. So if you saw somebody just sort of blissing out in the meditation, he would say, "Stop it! Stop it! Wake up! Stop that!" Yeah. He would. right in the middle of a meditation. Anyway, so he pointed out, and as has come up in a few of the conversations, interview sessions, that when the mind is, when you're living on the precepts and you have a very wholesome lifestyle and you do a lot of formal meditation, then it's natural for there to be the result of a degree of spaciousness, quietness, brightness, peacefulness. And so he said it's rather like having a beautiful meditation hall or a house with a large living room, and it's not cluttered by a lot of furniture and junk and lots of untidy things, old dinner plates and cups and bits of clothing and odd pieces of leftover belongings from different people. But the space is tidy, it's clean, it's open, it's bright. And so when the mind is quiet and peaceful, it's like having a big, bright, clean, open space. And if you have a large room in your home like that, then you can use it for all kinds of things. You can have a gathering with your friends, you could have a discussion, a Dhamma discussion, you could have a dinner party, you could have children to come over and play their party games, all kinds of different things you can use that space for. Just to leave the space open and just let there be a silent, bright spot in the house, we can do that. But he pointed out over and over again that we can be using this inner space in a lot more valuable and dynamic ways. And so don't just sit there and sunbathe, but rather we can use that inner spaciousness, that inner quietness, and the capacity of the mind to reflect, to explore different aspects of Dhamma teachings. So, and this is, I feel, an area of meditation practice that's a bit neglected because people tend to focus on either samatha, concentration practices, to kind of clear out the clutter and to establish a clean, bright inner space, which is good. It's very useful. And then in Vipassana, where we are sort of deconstructing and developing wisdom in relationship to thoughts and feelings, perceptions, mental formations, memories, emotions, and so on. But the active use of wise reflection, contemplation, then that is something that is not that commonly talked about in terms of meditation practice. Very frequently, the approach towards meditation, and maybe it's more so in the West than here in Asia, in Thailand and other Asian countries, but it's often taken that any kind of thinking is some sort of infection or intrusion upon meditation. That thought is some kind of like a disease, and if you could only stop thinking, then you would be peaceful, you'd be liberated, and that we can worship the idea of not thinking. But Luang Por Chah would point out that these rocks don't think, but these rocks are not enlightened, or just sitting still in one spot for hours and hours or days on end. He'd say, these forest chickens, they can sit on a nest for 3 or 4 days without moving. They're not liberated. They're doing a good job looking after their eggs, but they're not liberated. So just being able to sit still for 3 days and not move from your sitting mat, that is not intrinsically valuable or liberating. And so that I'm extremely grateful, both for Luang Por Chah and Luang Por Sumedho, for highlighting this aspect, so that, and as again, it came up in one of the conversations today, mysteriously, strangely, we can do our best thinking in the meditation, rather than thinking of or assuming the meditation is a way of getting away from thinking, to stop the mind from thinking at all, but rather we change the attitude towards thought, and it's not intrinsically busy or agitating, or it doesn't have to take up all of the space of the mind. And so I don't know if that is something that is such an assumption in Asia as it is in the West, but there is a kind of worshipping of the idea of not thinking, and that's taken to be some kind of liberated state. But if you look at Buddhist psychology, then thought is just another sense object. The eye perceives light, the ears perceive sound, the nose perceives odors, the tongue perceives flavors, the body perceives sensations, and the mind perceives thoughts or mind objects. The thought is a sense object. It's not particularly sacred or special, and it's not particularly problematic or intrusive. It's just another object. So if there's a skillful attitude towards thought, just as we can hear sounds in the meditation and it doesn't have to be upsetting or intrusive, we can feel sensations in the body and it doesn't have to be upsetting or a problem. Similarly, thought can be in the mind and it doesn't automatically create an unliberated state. It's not automatically absorption. We tend to give our thoughts a lot of value. There tends to be the belief that if we think something, that it's true and we should trust it. But most of our thoughts don't really have a lot of meaning. So like the sound of the air conditioning doesn't have a meaning, it's just a sound. The sound of the crickets and the cicadas, that might have a meaning. It might mean, I'm here, come and find me. Or it might mean, go away, this is my spot. I can't understand the language of the crickets and the cicadas myself. But for us humans, it's just a noise in the background and we can just let it be there. We don't have to make anything of it. So I would say that, roughly speaking, and this is a very much, as they say, a finger in the wind, I'd say about 5% of our thoughts are valuable and meaningful, and 95% are just odds and ends, bits of memory, things that we've heard, or the kind of resonances of the day or the week or the year, and or just random bits of imagination and remembered pictures or movies or stories or conversations or events that don't really have a lot of meaning or value. You can do your own calculations on this, but I think it seems to be about 5% are actually useful and meaningful, and the rest is just the sound of the aircon and the cicadas and the crickets and the rain on the roof when the rain is falling. So the process of wise reflection, or where we can of increase that 5% to a bit more, is to actively use the capacity to contemplate, to develop investigation, Dhamma Vijaya, the investigation of reality, or Yoniso Manasikara, the wise reflection. These are almost identical meaning, really, in the Pali. So when the mind is reasonably still and quiet, attending to the present, like your internal space is tidy, is clean, is uncluttered, then we can bring in to our internal space particular themes. And so all those years ago, in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe 3 or 4 winter retreats in a row, then every Dhamma talk, every morning reflection, every evening Dhamma talk that Luang Por Sumedho gave, and he was doing all of the teaching in those days, pretty much, was on the theme of Paticcasamuppāda. And what he would do he would take a particular section, like avijja paccaya sankhara, ignorance, conditions, formations, and then he would reflect on that and explore that and talk about ways of investigating that and different aspects of its meaning. For like 2 or 3 weeks, that would just be like the one area he would talk about. And so it was really not just his voice bringing up those themes, but then the encouragement was, when we're sitting in the meditation hall or doing the walking meditation through the whole day, then that's what we're doing. We're looking at ignorance, conditions, formations, or ignorance complicates everything, or just taking the single word. He say, okay, when we say avijja, what do we mean? When we say ignorance, what does the English word ignorance say to us? What's its usual meaning? How do we understand it in the Buddhist context? And this was so helpful because you can get so kind of familiar with particular terms, or you have your idea what something means, and you don't really look at it, you don't investigate it, you don't explore. So, like, just as an example, they're taking ignorance. So in ordinary English usage, when we say we're ignorant of something, it just means we don't have the information. So I'm ignorant of how to operate the controls on the air conditioning, or I don't know how to adjust the sound system. I'm ignorant of how to adjust the sound system in our Dhamma hall here. So it's just not having a particular piece of information. That's what ignorance means. That's not being knowledgeable about a particular activity or a process or a situation. It comes from the Greek word gnosis, which is interestingly related to the Pali word jnana. So gnosis, Gnosis. You don't pronounce the G, so it's pronounced gnosis. And the beginning is negative, so it means not knowing. So in ordinary everyday use of the word ignorance, so this is an ignorant person. He's an ignorant person. He doesn't know much, or he doesn't understand things. He's not educated. So in the Pali, there's even though avijja is translated as ignorance, it has a slightly different shades of meaning. It doesn't mean not having the information. Rather, vijja is awakened awareness. It's that quality of profound knowing, not knowing about, but the quality of awareness itself. So if you can tell the difference. So knowing about Chaisai, knowing about Thailand, knowing about the history of the English royal family, that's kind of knowing about, that having the information about something. But vijja is not knowing about, it's the quality of knowing in its pure and transcendent essence. So it's a quality of awareness itself, not information about something, not even a conceptual understanding of things, but this capacity to know, to be awake, to be aware. And so avijja is not being awake, not being aware. And so in English, there's a very very rare word, which is nescience. Science, meaning like scientific, literally means to know, from the Latin sciere. Nescience is not knowing. So the English word nescience is a bit closer to avijja, but when you say nescience to somebody in English, they go, "Huh? What?" Because it's a very uncommon word. So unawareness is probably a very good way of representing it. Ajahn Thanissaro uses unawareness as the translation for ignorance. So Luang Por Sumedho would talk about this kind of thing in reflection and say, so look at that. What's your experience of awareness? What's your experience of unawareness? When you think of knowing, then does your mind assume that means knowing about, having a conceptual understanding, or having some information on something? Or do you have a sense of what the quality of awareness is like on its own? The wordless, unconstructed, unformed quality of knowing itself. So this was extraordinarily helpful. So, okay, right, yeah, I do think of it like that. So instead of assuming or following that familiar track, instead I can see, oh, it means not being awake, not being aware. So when we say mindfulness and wisdom, satipanya, that's kind of the same thing as vijja, as awareness. And unawareness, avijja, it's like not being mindful, not applying mindfulness and wisdom. Okay, so being unmindful, not paying attention, not being aware. Okay, so I'm not doing your reflection for you. I'm just sort of giving you an example. I mean, you can take notes, and this is all being recorded, but just it's that kind of a way that during the meditation to be picking something up, like, what does the word avijja mean? How do I feel that? What's in my own language, whether you're from Thailand or Malaysia or Singapore or Australia or wherever whatever your home language is. Okay, how do I put that into Bahasa Indonesia? How do I put that into German? How do I put that into Thai? What are the associations that I have in my own background, my education, that my experience that match that? So you're getting and again, it was talking with the Q&A and speaking with Noah, and also in the discussions groups today, getting a feeling, a direct feeling in your own experience, what this word refers to. And again, as I was saying, I spent a lot of years not understanding, not comprehending the large pieces of the dependent origination pattern. But slowly, and particularly through Luang Por Sumedho's guidance and teaching how to reflect and explore, slowly think, avijja paccaya sankhara. So when there's ignorance, when you don't see clearly, then what arises, or what that conditions, is sankhara. So the world of, so sankhara means a thing. Sang means together. Kara comes from karoti, to make, that which is put together, that which is compounded. So a sankhara is a thing. So when the mind doesn't see clearly, it creates the world of things. A me here who's a thing, and the world out there, which is another set of things. It creates thingness. Oh, maybe that's an aspect of what sankhara means. So that kind of process of exploring a word, and then when you come across a stretch of it that is mysterious, saying, so sankhara paccaya vijnana. How does that work? How does the world of things condition vijnana, discriminative consciousness? What's the connection? And then all you get is a big roaring silence. You get the inner, a large, loud nada experience, a loud nada. Right, that is not clear to me. And so again, I had a lot of that roaring silence, and I said, "How does that work? Or what's the connection? Or how could that be so automatic?" And then just Mairu, like, I don't know. I don't see how that works. I don't know what that means. And so again, as came up in one of the conversations today, don't feel you have to fill up that unknowing a belief or a plan or a concept or an idea, which if you have an intellectual inclination, if your mind is quite good at thinking and you like to have explanations for everything, it's very tempting to kind of try and come up with a scheme, an idea, how it fits together. And my brain loves to do that. I like to have answers for everything. So just to say, okay, that's mysterious. I don't know how that works. That's the most skillful thing. And again, that was Luang Por Sumedho's advice over and over again. If there's unknowing, if there's not seeing clearly, then know that you don't know. That this is not clear. Like if it's dark or the misty weather this morning, you couldn't see the hills because it was misty. So if it's misty or foggy, the clouds are down, you can't see the hills. So if you get a flashlight, a torch, and you shine it, you still won't be able to see them. If you blink a few times, you still won't be able to see them because the air is filled with cloud and mist. So more blinking and a bright flashlight won't help. You can't see. So that just recognizing in this moment that connection, that area is mysterious. That it's not apparent how that works. Let it be mysterious. There's even a Pali word for that, ananya tanya samitindriya, the faculty of knowing the unknown, knowing that you don't know. Ananya tanya samitindriya. It's a very long Pali word. Knowing that you don't know. And that's challenging for us, particularly the intellectuals amongst us, because we like to know, have it all figured out and be able to explain to ourselves and other people how it all works. But I found that was very, very helpful advice, that just because you don't have a piece of information or an intellectual map, nothing is lacking, because most of the universe is completely mysterious anyway. So all the other leaves on the trees in the Singsapa forest, the Buddha said, this is what I know. It's comparable to all the leaves on the trees. But what I teach you is just the Four Noble Truths. So most of life is completely mysterious. We focus on the bits that we can explain and can manipulate, which is, again, about 1 or 2%. The other 98%, go, it's like if any of you say high school teachers or university teachers, or if this is your kind of field, if you're a high school teacher and a student asks you, what is an electron? Okay, this is fairly easy to explain. An electron is a very small particle, has a charge of -1, and electrons spin around the nucleus of an atom. That's what an electron is. You ask somebody who's a Nobel Prize winner, what's an electron? And they go, oh, how many months do we have? Because the more you know about the field, the more it's impossible to really explain what anything is and how it all works. It's very, very mysterious how the whole universe operates. So lacking a particular piece of understanding is more the norm. I think is that to relate to that as, say, a gap in your mind or your life, I would say is a mistake. It's just one area that is mysterious at the moment, and maybe it'll be understood later on. So another of the things I like to encourage, and this is what I was referring to before, and that Luang Por would do, he would take one section and make that the program for like 2 or 3 weeks. So Salayatana Pasavedana, and so every Dhamma talk, day after day, through those 2 or 3 weeks, Salayatana Pasavedana, looking at each of those elements. How do they fit together? How do they condition each other? How do they affect each other? What's the relationship? And again, mapping that onto your moment-by-moment experience and slowly getting a feel for how that works. So Salayatana, the 6 senses, okay? Passa, sense contact. And Vedana. So Vedana, okay, so Vedana, I've always called that feelings, but then my mind tends to associate that with emotions and attitudes. But really, Vedana, in that respect, it just means sensation, pleasant sensation, painful sensation, neutral sensation. Oh, right, remember that. Yeah. It's not about emotions or opinions. It's just a very raw, simple, positive feeling, negative feeling, neutral feeling. Aha. So that that's a very useful thing to do. Make it a little program. Okay, yeah, this month is my how does Vijnana and Namarupa work together? They condition each other. They lean on each other. There's this image of the bundles of reeds kind of leaning together. Or now, what does that mean? How does that work? And just make a program. Okay, let that be a theme for a couple of weeks or a month. What you look at when you've got that clear open space in the meditation, it's say an area to explore. And if after looking at it and exploring and trying getting a feel for it for a month, you realize the nada sound is very loud. There's no more clarity in this area. It's still okay. Leave it aside and then pick up another area. Okay, Vedana Pachayatana. Okay, very good, easy. Let's go to that bridge. So why do I keep crossing that bridge? Why do I keep crashing the same car? Well, I know if this bridge gets crossed, it gets painful. Why do I get to this Vedana side of the bridge and keep going? Why does that happen? How does that happen? What's the inner experience of that choice being made, that bridge being crossed? How does that work? And so you're taking each of these pieces and exploring it, getting a feel for it. And then sometimes I found for myself some of the areas that was the roaring silence was there on for like 3, 4, 5 years of just I don't know how that works. I don't know what that refers to. I really don't get that. But okay, let's just look at these other areas and explore those. And then slowly things get clearer and the pattern gets kind of integrated. I found there's several books, if you want sort of more background information, with respect to that early part of the Paticcasamuppāda process, the avijja, sankhara, vijnana, namarupa, salayatana, that chunk, the establishment of the subject-object relationship, a really good book that refers to that area quite specifically and helpfully is by a Sri Lankan monk called Bhikkhu Jnanananda, called Magic of the Mind. And he uses the description, the Namarupa Vijnana vortex. So a vortex is like a whirlpool, like like a whirlwind or a spiral of water. So he says the Namarupa Vijnana vortex. So rather than just say two bundles of reeds leaning on each other, it's still how things affect each other and say work together. But he uses the image of a whirlpool or a vortex, like a whirlwind, of how things gather strength and form together. And so his description of that part of the process and then bringing in other sutta quotations that talk about that is very, very helpful. It's quite a thin book. He's got a very sharp intellect, but it's quite easy to understand. And so he's a very, very valuable resource. I don't think there's a Thai version, but it'll help you improve your English. So The Magic of the Mind by Bhikkhu Jnanananda. And then as a book that talks about the whole process of dependent origination, Tan Somdet Buddhaghosajan, Prapayuto's book, Dependent Origination, the Buddhist law of I think causality is I think is the best thing in print. That is very thorough, again, very readable, very understandable, gives very good examples for each of the areas of the process of dependent origination in different tangible forms. And I will put my own book third in the list, Catastrophe Apostrophe, the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination and dependent cessation. So I definitely put myself in the third place, but I do cover a lot of this material in that book. And you can find that online. The Bhikkhu Jnanananda's book is published by the Buddhist Publication Society in Sri Lanka, and Prapayuto's Dependent Origination is available online as a free download. You can get that. It's also part of his great big tome called Buddha Dhamma. So that I feel that this is something that we can valuably do, not just on this retreat, but taking these different areas of the whole process uh, and then making it a project for 2, 3 weeks, a month at a time. Uh, Tanha Upadana Bhava, Jati Jara Marana. Or how does the Jara Marana Sokaparideva Dukkha Domanasa Upayasa, how does that condition avijja? We call it the Bhava Chakra, the wheel of becoming. So how does link number 8 and that number 12 connect to link number 1? Why does that happen? And look at that. When you have that experience of the sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair, everything's gone wrong, you're miserable, lonely, insecure, it's all broken. Okay, how does that connect to ignorance? How does that feed the habit of the attitude of avijja? How does that link? How do they affect each other? Why is it a cycle? Uh, and so uh, making it like a particular focus project, take like a couple of links or 2 or 3 links, because the whole thing together is kind of too big, I would say. It's kind of too complicated, too big. But just taking a section of 2 or 3 links at a time, which is what Luang Por Sumedho would do, was so helpful. And then going over and over and over again. So, oh no, not Salayasa Pasavedana again. Yeah. But then you hear it again, and then, oh my goodness, I didn't see that. I didn't understand that. And so then it's a kind of homework for you all to take, not just here have on the retreat, but taking with you, because it's the kind of thing that is an ongoing process. And as I mentioned, it took me years and years and years, and really, it wasn't until after about the 3rd or 4th year of Luang Por Sumedho going through that um, in those winter retreats and having Prapayutta's book, Dependent Origination, that so by that time I'd been a bhikkhu for about 12 years. Okay, now I think I'm getting it. And I'm a professional meditator. It's like, this is so it isn't quick. And it's not just having a neat conceptual map, but really getting a feeling for how each of the pieces work. But then it's extraordinarily helpful because it gives you it helps you to make sense of the different aspects of your world, and then also you can develop those exit points that I was talking about a couple of days ago, and you can see which exit points are easier to find than others. Some know that theoretically there's an exit over there, but you can never find the door. So which are the ones that work most easily and can be developed most effectively. So when we talk about wise reflection, then it's not just a kind of getting lost in mental chatter, but when and people often ask, what's the difference between thinking, vitakka, ordinary conceptual thought, and yoniso manasikara? So when we are bringing in a theme into the mind, like saying, how does the experience of dukkha condition more ignorance? How does that work? So if you find that you're immediately getting lost in a memory, or oh yeah, I made such a stupid mistake, and how could I have done that? And then that's not wise reflection. That's papancha, pungang, kind of getting lost in the fungsan, kind of thinking and worrying and mental activity. That is not liberating. That's just creating more confusion. So if we are using this as an active practice and making it work, then that quality of contemplation, wise reflection, it's like the room is still spacious and you're still aware. This is an open space of the mind, and we're looking at how these different qualities interact. So wise reflection, the mind thinks in whole sentences, beginning, middle, end. And at the end of a sentence, there's a space. Like, how does ignorance condition formations? space. So when we say formations, what's that mean? What's the association of that word formation and sankhara, space? So Ajahn Amaro said a sankhara is a thing. So a thing. Do I assume that a thing has solidity and permanence? I do. Aha. So that's why when we consider things, sankhara, maybe that's why all sankharas are dukkha, unsatisfactory, because they're not really things. We say that they're solid, we assume they're solid and permanent, but they aren't really. That's why they can never hold. They can never hold up. They are never really permanent. They're never really solid. That's why sabbe sankhara dukkha, because they're not really things. They don't hold together. They're not reliable. Stop. Oh, that's useful. Stop. So that kind of a way. I mean, again, I'm just making that up as I go along. But you're thinking in whole sentences, there's spaces between them. There's a measured, steady quality. And if then you find that, oh, that's really great. I'll have to write that down. And wait till I tell my friends. And then you're kind of lost in papancha, pungdeng again. And that's not helpful. So if you notice that, then okay, calm down, relax the body, come back. Okay, so sankhara. So that you can sustain that quality of measured, clear thinking. You're using your natural intelligence, the natural wisdom, to explore those different qualities, the meaning of particular words and the relationship between them. And so that that is essentially the difference between contemplation and just the mental chatter. One of the points that Luang Por Chah makes when he's asked, what is wise reflection? He said, well, we use thoughts, we use words to support the process of wise reflection, but it doesn't require words essentially. The actual quality of looking and exploring, that is in itself, that's wordless. So like if you're finding your way through the forest, you go, oh, what's that over there? And there's a looking, and the mind is recognizing patterns and seeing how things fit together, where there are spaces, where there are objects, and how they relate with each other. That's not a concept. Those are not words. It's recognizing patterns and how things fit together. So I feel that's a very helpful aspect that Luang Por Chah highlights, that when we talk about contemplation or wise reflection, we assume that it always means words or ideas, but it doesn't have to. It can be just that the active use of intelligence and the capacity of the mind to recognize patterns and how things work together. So that using a time like we have now, this retreat, it's a really good opportunity when the mind is a bit quiet. We've been together for 3 or 4 days now. We're about at the halfway mark, maybe just past the halfway mark. So hopefully the mind has got a bit quieter, a bit calmer, a bit more still. So we have these clear, open inner spaces that we can use, and you can pick up, particularly these different sections of the dependent origination, and develop the skill of wise reflection. Okay, where do you get lost? Okay, as soon as I start thinking about an example from my personal life, carried away and lost in that. Okay, so maybe if I use examples from the natural world rather than my personal history, then the mind will not get so carried away so easily. So we're exploring and experimenting with how to use that process of wise reflection and not just be feeding more inner chatter. And in this way, you find that you can do your best thinking in the meditative space, because also there's when you say using wise reflection, the mind isn't absorbed into the words or the ideas. There's space around them. There's kind of mental space around the words, the ideas, the sort of mental images. So it's not filling up that whole inner space. It's not your room is then suddenly filled with all this intellectual stuff, but rather it's there's a spaciousness, a peacefulness, a clarity around the use of thought. So it's then showing you we can think without thought being a problem. We can think without thought being oppressive or something that's burdensome or limiting the mind. So in this, a lot of this, the development of wise reflection, investigation, it's in a sense it's very closely connected to mindfulness and full awareness, sati sampajanya, and so that's usually I don't know how they translate it in Thai language, maybe rule sati ru jam jang, that kind of thing. Sati sampajanya in Thai would be Ruchap. So in the classical translation into English is mindfulness and clear comprehension. And so a number of years ago, Luang Por Sumedho thought, well, you can be fully aware of something that you don't comprehend at all. Like I was saying, most of life is mysterious. So you can be fully aware of something you don't comprehend. So comprehension is not a good word to use. So he started to use the term intuitive awareness as a translation for sati sampajanya. And so I feel this wise reflection, investigation, is strengthening that capacity for intuitive awareness. So you're getting a feel for how things work, the patterns of your life, your mind, how the world operates. That's what, and so that doesn't necessarily mean we understand everything, but we can get a feeling for how it works together, even if we can't explain in detail. So I feel that's again a helpful way of letting things be mysterious. That you don't have to understand every detail to get a sense of, well, I'm not sure how that works, but I can see how it hangs together generally, and that there's and we can say strengthen that quality of sati sampajanya, and that capacity of the mind to know the objects that we're experiencing, and also the context in which they exist, the time, the place, the situation. So one of the things also I thought to share, and it's an expansion really on that fourth exit point. Just to I was talking about that fourth exit point that's related to the Eightfold Path. Is what are the causes for ignorance? What's the source or the origin of that? And at the very root, if you remember, was not drawing close to good people. Sappurisa sangseva, drawing close to good people, is the cause for ending ignorance. And so there's a helpful collection of teachings about what constitutes a sappurisa, a well-rounded person, or not just a good-hearted person, but someone who is so well-developed spiritually. So I feel this is a useful set of qualities to be aware of, because it's kind of it gives you a sign of the kind of people it's good to draw close to, have these 7 qualities, but also, more importantly, you can be a sappurisa for other people. So maybe when I was talking about drawing close to good people, you think, oh, great, if I draw close to good-hearted people, that will help me. But it also goes the other way. You can be a sappurisa for others. Not to inflate your ego and say, I'm a sappurisa. I get a special badge. I graduated from Ajahn Amaro's Chaisai retreat. I'm a sappurisa. Yeah. But that which is wrong grasping of wholesome qualities. But I just thought to briefly just to share these, because I feel it's again from Tan Somdet Buddha Gosajan's works. There's a book of his called Constitution for Living, that I think is very, very well known in Thailand. And it's got a lot of lists of very wholesome qualities that are, say, described in the suttas. But this list of the 7 attributes of a well-rounded person, a sappurisa, a good-hearted, well-rounded person, and they're kind of like spelling out the details of how to practice intuitive awareness and that sati sampajanya, how to grow that, develop that. So just and we can look at this in a bit more detail in coming days. But the 7 qualities of a sappurisa, the first one is dhammanyuta. So the anya in that is knowledge about or knowing. So dhammanyuta, and that particularly refers to contemplating the causes of things. So if you're a sappurisa, a well-rounded person, someone who's really developed sati sampajanya, they will consider, where did this come from? What's the cause of this? Where does this originate from? Not as some kind of philosophical map of the universe, but why am I feeling uncomfortable, or why does that? Why do I relate to this situation with excitement or with fear? Where does that come from? Why? So that you're contemplating the causes where things originate from. So that's dhammanyuta, number 1. Number 2 on the list is attanyuta, A-T-T-H, attanyuta, which is contemplating the consequences. Where's this going to go? If I follow this action, what's the result going to be? If she does that, where's it going to take her? So not just your own actions, but also the people around you, in your family, in the workplace, and society. So how have we got to this state? Is the dhammanyuta the origins? Where is this going to go? Where does this look like it's going to head? So obviously we can't tell the future, most of us. I certainly can't. But again, if we study how nature works, then we can reflect not just on whether we like something or not, but rather, okay, where's this going to go? What are the likely results of this? So that we're looking at the consequences. And so, well, this is exciting or interesting, but it's going to be expensive. Or this is really very, very satisfying, and I really like it, but unfortunately, it's against the precepts. So, where's that going to go? And this will probably end up in regret and painful feelings, whatever it might be. So that those first 2, they work together. Dhammanyuta and attanyuta, A-T-T-H. The third one is very similar, attanyuta with no H, which is atta, the self. So like knowing your own personality. So this has come up, that's one of the things that made me think of this. This has come up in a few of the conversations, like knowing your own character. Are you outspoken? Are you extrovert? Are you an intellectual? Are you quiet? Are you artistic? Do you like to take action, or do you prefer to just be passive and hold back? Do you like to fix things? What's your personality like? So you might think, well, I thought we're supposed to be letting go of all of that, Ajahn. Like, yes, but it helps a lot to know the nature of the conditioning in order to really let go of it and not get entangled in it. So knowing your own character, knowing your own personality. So I know I'm a very chatty person. Words are my territory. You might have guessed. I was completely quiet for about the first 18 months. My mother thought there was something wrong with me because all the pictures of me, there's not many photographs of me as a baby, but up to about 1 year old, 1.5 years old, I'm scowling at the world. And there's no smiles. I'm just kind of sitting there with my kind of curly hair and kind of snarling at the world. I don't know why, but probably thinking, not this again. I was not going to come back, but here I am again. That's just my projection. But anyway, at about 18 months, I started talking, and I just didn't stop. And I was apparently able to make whole comprehensible sentences from very early on. And I could read and write by the time I was 3. So then I was off. So I'm very good with words, but I'm useless with with spaces. So when we have to talk about design of buildings or organizing ceremonies, I say, Ajahn Yanarato, how should we work this? So Ajahn Yanarato, where should we put the doorway? Because I can't, my brain doesn't do that. The architect that we have for the sala that we're building, he can imagine whole rooms in his mind and adjust the sizes and shapes of things and stay with his internal adjustment. That's amazing to me. That's completely inconceivable. How could you do that? Because my mind doesn't think in three-dimensional space. It thinks in words. So, are you a wordy person? Are you a mathematical person? Are you a sound person? I knew one fellow who was a professional chef. He could imagine flavors and smells. His mental proliferation on a 10-day retreat was conjuring up recipes and testing them on the meditation cushion through his imagination. Again, wow. He said, "Can you really do that?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Yeah, actually, there was this curry, and I knew it needed something, and then I suddenly realized it came to me in a flash. There's this Egyptian pomegranate. It's a particular kind of pomegranate you get in North Egypt. That's what it needed." And I go, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." And then when I put that in, it was absolutely perfect. And all the time he's sitting in the meditation hall. Well, okay, so you get to know how your mind works and your kind of territory. So Atanyuta, ATT, knowing your own character. Then the fourth one is Matanyuta. So this means knowing the right amount. So particularly with food, this is very commonly referred to, Matanyuta, knowing the right amount. So when you've had enough to eat, then you put the spoon or the fork down, and you know that you're full. Knowing the right amount, also the right amount to speak, to stop speaking, the right amount of energy. How much can your body deal with? The right amount of pain to tolerate in meditation. So it's not just with food. I mean, most often in the kind of Buddhist teaching, Matanyuta is talk about the example is knowing the right amount of food to take. But it across the spectrum, if we're developing mindfulness and full awareness or intuitive awareness, then we learn to listen, to feel. And so it's an interesting, with regards to the right amount of food, if you pay attention, and the training we have in the monastery is you're supposed to follow the Buddha's encouragement. When 5 more mouthfuls would be enough, you should stop eating and finish off with drinking water. So you might think rationally, how can you tell when 5 more mouthfuls would be enough? How could you know that? But if you pay attention, there's a definite shift. Sometimes particularly when you're a young monk and food is the most interesting thing that happens in the day. And you really don't want to feel that feeling, but you just passed that mark. you know you just had enough. So if you pay attention and you kind of feeling the body, listening to the body, then at a certain point, okay, that's enough. And then the challenging practice is to say, okay, if there's anything left on your plate or in your bowl, to kind of leave it alone and to not follow the Mara encouragement of, well, just tidy it up a little bit. Be ashamed to waste all that good food that they've offered. And, it's not respectful to the cooks to leave anything. They're kind of inner murmurs that basically want you to have more. So that developing that intuitive sense, what's the right amount to speak? What's the right amount of exercise, of time to be working? I mean, that it's the feeling of, okay, that's enough. Time to go home, switch off, say goodbye to everyone. That's we're good here. Or working in the garden, or spending your time helping the sangha to travel places or carry out projects. Okay, that's enough. So then the last three. So it was Dhammanyuta, Attanyuta, Matanyuta. Then Kalanyuta is the next one. Kala is time, so knowing the right time for things. So punctuality, very important, but also what's the right time to speak? What's the right time to be quiet? What's the right time to get up and go for a walk? What's the right time to sit still and when you've been with people, is it the right time to bring things to an end? So kalanyuta, knowing the time, and that's the way that we often finish a Dhamma talk. That's a appropriate amount of Dhamma has been shared for this time. So matanyuta, kalanyuta. At this time, okay, it's now 8:35. I started at 8:39, 7:39. So another 4 minutes before we hit the hour. So getting to that's kalanyuta, is knowing the right time. So then the last two are parisanyuta and pugalanyuta. So parisa is the Thai word bodhisat. Buddha bodhisat is the Buddha parisa, the collection of the Buddha's disciples. So parisa is knowing the group that you're with. Are you receiving a group of engineering students in your monastery? Are you visiting your aunt and uncle? Are you say conducting a class in the kindergarten? Yeah. Are you sitting in an airport lounge? Who are you with? What's the group situation that you're a part of? Are you expected to lead? Are you expected to follow? So parisanyuta. So like we just had this grand gathering at Amaravati to celebrate Luang Por Sumedho's 90th year. So I'm the abbot of the monastery, but I was also about 20th in line in terms of seniority. So I was definitely not the senior guy. So I took on the role of being the kind of MC, making the announcements, but it was not my show. Yes, Luang Por Sumedho is the person we were celebrating and rejoicing in his life and teachings, and he's at 57 Vasa. I'm only 45, and he was not the most senior either. Luang Por Liam, Luang Por Damrong, Buriram, and Luang Por Kun Napo, all senior to him. So in that parisa, it was my role not to be the guy in the middle doing all the talking, but doing a bit of emceeing, introducing, and getting out of the way. So, what's our group? What are we a part of? And so that adaptability, when it's time to lead, you lead. When it's time to follow, you follow. What you say to a group of engineering students is not what you say to a group of kindergarten children. Or the conversations you have with your aunt and uncle are not the same as you have with your old college friends. So who are you with? And then Pugalanyuta, Pugala is a person. So that kind of narrows it down to an individual, not just the group and your role within a group, but in just the dynamic between you and one other person. Why are you together? Why are you in the same place? Are you just sitting next to each other on the plane? Is this your mother? Yeah. Is it a fellow Dhamma practitioner? So knowing another person and appreciating that their character, again, the situation of why you're together, what's the relationship between you, and to be taking those things into account. So these 7 are the 7 Sappurisa Dhammas, and I feel this is there are many lists in Buddha Dhamma, but this is one that's very helpful to get to know, because it spells out, okay, if we want to discern who are the well-rounded people in my life, then they will have many of these qualities. There'll be this kind of person who thinks about causes and consequences. They'll be punctual. They'll be timely. They'll know the right amount for things. So that gives you a clue, or who to draw close to and who to be benefited by. And it's also a set of aspirations or qualities that we can work to develop in this life of ours in order to be of great benefit to the people around us.